This is Gemara Zevachim, Daf Mem Vav, and we're holding on Mem Heya Mid Beis, about 13 lines to the bottom. The first word in line is Talmud Loimar Yikrav, as we're going to continue discussing the aforementioned Braisa. Once again, we'd like all the learning to be an incredible schos, Refuah Shalema, for Gabriel Simcha and very Mahuba. We pick it up again about 12 lines from the bottom. The first line is Tamalemi Yikrav Omar Rav Elazar. Says Rav Elazar, says Rav Elazar, from the previous brayse, it would seem that if someone who is tamei touches a carbon, he's going to be chayiv karis. Says Rav Elazar, is there such a concept in Torah? Says Rav Elazar. Can you fathom that one is going to be chayiv karis for a mere touch? We know that what makes you chayiv karis for consuming the carbon, not for touching it. Elamat tamalam yikraf. But then the problem is, what does the pasuk mean when it says yikraf? Behochshar likarev akasa medaber. The pasuk is talking about where the carbon is ready to be brought as a carbon on the Mizbeach. And it's teaching us at that moment, at the moment of Hochshar, at the moment that it's a likarev, it's about to be brought, that's the moment that if one were to eat it, he'd be chayiv karis. Meaning, it's not that likarev that when it comes close, meaning that just by touching it, it's the stage in the carbon that one would be chayiv. Ha ketzad, says the Gemara. Yesh lai matirin, something that has something that is matirit. A tamei is going to be chayiv umishikrav matirim when it happens, meaning when all the steps happen, then now this item could be brought as a carbon. Ein loy matirin, then misha yikdash bekli, then it's going to be at the point when it is kadosh bekli, it is sanctified in the vessel. Says the Gemara, Ashkechan Tama. Okay, we've explained the previous brisa, and the Mishnah really, and we found the makar for the din of the Mishnah, klape eating bitama. Noiser minalan. How do we know the same din is going to be by noiser? Says the Gemara, 8 lines from the bottom. The first one line is asi chilul mitama. We learn out Gzir Shava of Chilul from Tama. Says the Gemara of Alva and Ava and Mi Pigel. Why don't we learn out from Pigel? Explains the Gemara, Mistavra Mitama Havle Lemelaf. Why? Shekain Gezel Kisiv Simin. Because it's Mistaver, it's learned out from Tama. Why? Because it's similar to Tama in 3 characteristics. The characteristics are Gezel, the Gimel being Guf, the Zayin being Zrikas Adam, and the Lamed being Chilul. Rashi over here, towards the bottom of the Amid, Rashi spells out what we just said. But ask the Gemara 1 second, 5 lines from the bottom, Adarabba. Why? Shkein Noisar, says the Gemara, you know why? Because Shkein Hutar actually is, they changed the Girsa, Tzitz, or Shekein Noisar, Tzitz, Tahar, Bizman, Karev. So there's 5 comparisons, Vahani Nefishin, and 5 similarities are going to be closer than 3. So why are you telling me to learn it out? Oven mi pegel, that mistaver mi tomok, it's similar in 3, it's similar in 5. Says the Gemara, you're right. Ella, you know what the source for Nicer is? Miditani Levi, Ditani Levi, Minayin Sha'af Apostle Zman, Hakasa Medaber. From where do we know that the pasuk that says of the Isser of eating while Tameh is applicable to all karbanis is also discussing Zman, also discussing a pigul in Zman, which is nicer when you're going to eat something past the extended time. Talmud loymar v'lo yechalu as kadshay Hashem Kadshia Sheim Akdishim Li. Do not be Machalel. Says the Gemara as we turn over to Mem Vav Amid Aleph explains what we learn out from this pasuk. From the plural of Chilul b'shnei chilulin, in two types of Chilul, Akasa Midaber, Echad Pasol, Naisar ve'Echad Pasol, Toma. So from the plural, L'shaynais of Yechalalu, we learn out these two Isurim, the Psul of Naisar, and the psul of Toma. Says the Gemara Chutz min Adam, quoting the next part of the Mishnah that says that Dam is excluded from the din of Naisar, from the din of Toma, that if it's eaten when in a matzav of Naisar or Toma, it's going to be, there will not be karis. Minani, immediately where do we know this from? Amar Ula, Amar Kra. V'ani nesativ lachem. Says Ula, we learned in Me'ilah that the pasuk says, "Ani nesativ lachem, I've given to you upon the mizbeach that what shalachem yehei, that it should be yours, and there's going to be no hilchos Me'ilah to the dam." Tevei Rabbi Yishmael Tana, Amar Kra lechaper. Says the pasuk to be lechaper, to provide a kapara. Lechapara nisativ v'loi l'me'ilah. That the pasuk is talking about that the dam gives you a kapara, but there's no dinei me'ilah. Rav Yochanan Amar, a third mikar, Amar Kra, says the pasuk who, this is, the dam is what provides the kapara. And the Gemara explains, "Who livnei kapara kalachar kapara," that before the kapara is like after the kapara, meaning ma achar kapara ein by meila, just like after kapara there's no din of meila anymore. Afnei kapara ein loy meila in by meila, and that's what we see, that there's no meila by the dam. Says the Gemara, let's dive a little bit deeper into Shitas Rabbi Yochanan. Ema lachar kapara kilivnei kapara. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Why are you telling me that lifnei kapar achar kapar? Excuse me. Why are you telling me that lifnei kapar is like lachar kapara? Say fakert. Say lachar kapara is like lifnei kapara, and that what? Ma lifnei kapara yesh by milah kapara yesh by milah. So how do you know which way to learn it? Says the Gemara. Ein l'chadavar shenasa mitzvasai. There's no such thing that we can have an entity that you did the mitzvah, meaning you're done, and yet you're still going to have mi'ilah. That's an oxymoron. Mi'ilah by its very nature means that it's waiting for the kachim, but once it's finished, there's no way that's shaykh, and therefore there's no way to think that the pasuk means that after the kapara is when there will yes be mi'ilah. Says Gemara, whoa, v'loi. But what about Shumas Hadeshen? We know that even though once the Avodah is finished, there's still a din of Mi'ilah. As Rashi points out, about 15 lines of the white lines. The halacha of the Shumas Hadeshen, taking one scoopful of the ash, Malai, Hamachta, Mimenu, V'neisa, B'mizracha, Shalakevish, Gedachsev, V'samai, Mashma Sham. We see even after you did the avodah, after you take off that scoopful of ashes, there's still a din of milah on it. Says the Gemara, no, don't ask for the Shumas Hadeshen. Shem David Shumas Hadeshen, Ubig De Kuna, Shnei Ksuv Mavayim Kechad. Two entities, Chol Shei Ksuv Mavayim Kechad, Ein Melamdim. As Rashi points out, what's Big De Kuna? Arba begadim shagoyin gadol nichlas ben lefnei v'lefnim b'yom kippurim sha'aser lishtamish by oid. You can't use them even after the avodah. Techsev u'pashas big de abba v'nicham sham v'tashinim alamish ha'tu'unan gniza. So says the Gemara, shnei ksuvim abayin kachar. That's what you can't learn from them. Ha nichal rabbanan. Says Gemara, 1 second. This makes sense according to the rabbanan that hold what? Tam Rivinicham Sham Elamishatun Geniza by the big day kuna. El Rav Daisa Dam Mutaris in the Kainad Yet. Rav Daisa argues Ubavachli Shabam the Yom Kippurim that a head is allowed to use the begadim, that this cannot be used On another Yom Kippur, Michael and Meimar, so you're not going to have Sheikh Suim Bain Kechad. Says the Gemara, you're right, but Misham Davi Trumas Hadashin ve'egla arufa Sheikh Suim Bain Kechad, Sheikh Suim Bain Kechad, ein melamdim. Says the Gemara Viter, 10 lines of the bottom, first line is melamdim. Ha nich lemandam ein melamdim in classical Gemara sense. Elamandam melamdim, there is a sheet that holds even Sheikh Suvim. You're allowed to learn from Michael and Meimar. Says the Gemara, you know what? Trey miuti ksiv. There are two miutim. One, as we'll see as we saw by Chumas Hadashen, one by the Egla Arufa. Hach ksiv ha Arufa. Vasim ksiv vishamai samai. Each one being in the singular, and therefore, even according to the Mandam Mishnei Subayin Kechad Ein Melam Yesh Melamdim. Excuse me. Here, you will not be able to learn it out from. Tlasa cry bidam lamli. So now the Gemara goes full circle. It says lamaisa. Why do we need 3 psukim by the dam? You know what we need it for? 5 lines on the bottom. Mute mi'ila minaiser mitoma. Comes to exclude that the dam for the dinam of mi'ila, dinam of nais, dinam of tuma. Avul pegol loy tzarich kra. Why the tanan? Koshesh lamatir min leminavizech chayavin alam misham pegol vidam. Gufei matir. The dam is that which is matir. Therefore, it's pashit that is excluded from the halachos of pegol. Continues the Gemara Nushtekol Amar Rav Yechon Shloisha Krisos B'Shlamim Lamli. Why did the Torah have to say when a kohen eats a shlamim when he's tamei 3 different times that there's going to be kares? As we turn over to Menvav and Beis explains the Gemara. Achas liklal, v'achas leprat, v'achas ledavar she'inei achalim. And one is talking about things which are not edible. Well, the Rav Shimon davar she'inei achalin, ein chayav l'misham tama. Lasui imai. So what do you do with that third pasuk? Says the Gemara, you know you do with it. Lasui chatois hapanimius. It's come to include, excuse me, chatos hapanimius. Adich lamina hov amar Rav Shimon kol she'ino. So I would have thought b'shatoma nami l'machayiv kamash lon. Then no, you would yes be chayiv for toma. And we continue 8 lines down, quoting the last part of the Mishnah. Numi Rabbi Shimon eshedarka lechol. Says Rav Shimon, saying that it's darker to eat, you're chayiv, but eitzim levaina ketayres. Since you're not chayiv to eat, there's going to be no krisos. Itmar Rav Yechon Reisha Kish Avlaziv Rav Yesi Rav Chanina. 4 different gedolim. Chad midhai zuga v'chad midhai zuga. 1 from each pair. Chad Amar. 1 explains the Mishnah Machlekes b'tumas basar. Avol b'tumas agov dever kol einoy loika. Chad Amar fakert. Machlekes bezu kach machlekes bezu. So says the Gemara, my taima. Why would that be? Since we can apply that basa Karinin Bay, v'tamasa alive, you'll be within the Isser. Rav Tavyumi Masli Achi. Rav Tavyumi learned as we just said, but Rav Kahana learns differently. Masli Achi. Chad me'aizuga v'chad me'aizuga seifa. Chad amachlekes b'tumas agav, avol b'tumas basar, divir akol loike. Chad amar kim machlekes b'zu, kach machlekes b'zu. It's going to be the same machlekes. Amar Rava. Mistavra k'ma'adam k'machlekes b'zu, kach machlekes b'zu. My time. Akim d'lo karina be'v'tamasa yalav. V'nechrisa l'karina be'v'asa she'iga b'chol tamei lo yoichal. Ay, v'amar mar, abasar l'rabbi, z'eitim l'voyna l'paisla. Says the Gemara, you're right, they have the extra Joshua, but it's just l'paisla ba'alma, just coming to say that it is puzzle of the wood of the vine of the inedible items that are tamei, does not mean that there's necessarily going to be malchus. And now we continue a new Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, now we go in the chiyuvi. Till now we've been in the shlili, we've been in the negative. Don't have this machshava, don't have that machshava. This creates a machshava's pigul and this does not. Now says the Mishnah, l'shem shisha dvarim azevach nizbach. When you bring a carbon, you have 6 kavanos, l'shem zevach. l'shem zayveach. Whatever the carbon is going to be, whoever is the one bringing it, l'shem Hashem, it's for Hashem. Shem Yishem for the fire, l'shem reach, l'shem nichayach. It's for a good aroma, it's for to be pleasing to Hashem. V'chatas v'asham, l'shem chet. The chatas and asham are also brought as the shame for the avir that was committed. Amar Rav Yosi Avi Shloya v'libai l'shem echad mikol eilu. Says Rav Yosi, you're supposed to have 6 kavanas and you don't. Kosher. Why? Tanai bezdin. It's a tanai bezdin. Shein machshava lechas ela achara oived. Machshava goes after the one who does the avodah. So let's just begin. Just to start it off, Amruda Marav. What is the mikar for all these machshavos? Oila means l'shem lafuk l'shem shlam. Deloi deloi. Ishim means l'shem ishim. For the sake of the fire. Lafuke comes to exclude kabavo deloi, that you just want to roast the meat. That doesn't work. Reach l'shem reach lafuke avarim shetzalan. This comes to exclude avarim shetzalan ve'elan deloi, the limbs that roasted and then are going to be wrought up. Tamar Rav Yehuda Amarav in the first line, Ivarim Shetzalan Ve'elon Ein B'em Shemrech Nichayach L'Shem Nichayach Ein B'em Shemrech Nichayach L'Shem Anas Ruach L'Shem L'Shem Misha Amar V'Yolam HaKadosh Baruch Hu Amar Rav Yehuda Amarav Chata Sheshachta L'Shem Ayla Psula but L'Shem Chulin, if you shechta for a different carbon, then it's going to be Kshera. Amar Rav Elazar my time with Rav. For the chalu is kachim in Yisrael, kachim mechalim, kachim bein chulim mechalim kachim. But having kavana that's not going to be a carbon at all would not mess up the carbon. We'll pick it up from the 2 dots the next year. B'siyata dishmaya.